whereas he has been, I mean, kind of coasting through, but now up against INnoVation, the macro god, someone who could, yeah, definitely, like Todd said, go into mech. We did see some of that in the TVT of the qualifiers here. TY actually faced it, I think. I think Tasia's the one who did the mech. That's a throwback name.
Certainly is. For Maru going up against like any of his teammates when it comes to the Protoss players specifically, like even though I always think of Maru as like one of the best players in the world, and we've always wanted to see him versus Serral, when it comes to him versus like Trap or SOS, even when I think he's in really good form, those guys tend to get the better of him. And it's, I mean, that might come down to those are the guys that you practice with all the time.
Yeah.
They know all your tricks, because Maru, as strong as his micro is and as smart as he is, if he gives away his tricks and stuff to his teammates, then they can kind of know how to beat him. So starting off against Trap and losing there, I don't think it's too bad. But here, we have two very respectable builds here, where you know that your opponent is very, very good, so they're both scouting early, and it looks like they're both going to go for a fairly early expand, except Maru went for the double gas, so respecting his opponent even a little bit more here.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to guess it's actually the factory expand, not all the way up to a 1-1-1. In fact, going up all the way to starport's almost, in my opinion, become like, meme is too strong of a word, but it doesn't happen that often. It's almost always a factory expand, CC after barracks, or I suppose, well, a 2-Rex can happen still.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually when you see things like the SV Scout, that usually says that you're the guy going for the expansion, because you need to know if you're up against a proxy 2-Rex, you need to know what opening you have to do afterwards. Both these guys, this is really neat, by the way. A lot of people will send their SCVs completely back home, but both of them, even playing kind of defensively with an SCV, and Maru's going immediately for that Reaper. He knows how important it is, but INnoVation...
Enough army, especially with the lock-on here. No, he cannot grab the tank. All right, he does get out of lock-on range. That was scary.
That certainly was. And 26 workers now against 43. INnoVation is flustered at this moment in time. He is behind in every regard. And the fact that Maru can defensively siege up at INnoVation's base and just feel so safe behind all of this, this is crazy.
Oh, the Cyclone's still there. That Raven needs to be very careful with where it positions itself. I mean, one tank shot will kill the Cyclone, so it can only go so far, but continuing to be unknowing with an auto turret. It's not going to grab two auto turrets, actually, but not going to grab that. No, there's, with two of them focus firing, that got awfully close, but good mass repair with the mules included. Maru's not letting go of this position, though, and it's still a big problem for INnoVation. Oh,
that turret did absolutely nothing against Maru there. INnoVation's orbital is actually getting really low, too. Is the tank in range of the tank? No, it isn't either. This is just costing INnoVation so much, and back at home for Maru, he's even getting the upgrades that he needs as well. The +1, the +1. Third orbital is now done. INnoVation struggling to stay alive and even loses tanks on the low ground. GG, Maru takes a super convincing...
Can very quickly spiral out of control.
Oh, they certainly can. Like, both these guys went out at last Katowice, actually, and it was two of the guys that we were really hoping did well in that rather bad era of Terran. But here, it's nice to see that so far, they're both doing well, and they're both likely to make it out the group, given that they're 3-0 and 2-1 scores. But this could definitely make the group a little more difficult for the other players.
Yeah, I mean, considering everyone else is like 1-2, and those other matches are happening on other streams, guys. So you can keep more up to date with the scores than we can. But I mean, yeah, it can just get a little wonky. If INnoVation were to grab this one, I think he's for sure going on ahead. But Maru's looking to give him a run for that first place title. The factory expand for both players this time on Nightshade. So either INnoVation feeling like he wants to get something in return, or just wants to actually use this a bit defensively.
It's kind of cool to see how builds change over time as well. So Maru continues to scout with his opening with the double gas, which obviously he did that last time as well. But normally the SCV indicates that you're going for the Reaper expand build. So INnoVation, even though we get scouted, to see when the third is going down, even gets a little SCV pick off here.
I wonder if he's checking if the Banshee is a potentially clear zone. I mean, it's very likely the Banshee dies, and by the way, that's scanned pretty well timed, because the other Banshee, I think, is waiting. Yeah, if it's locked on once, it is very likely to die, unless you kind of, like, you know, make sure you're careful around the edges of the minerals. But he's going to send them both at the same time. He could grab a few SCVs. Is it better, though, than having as many Ravens INnoVation is building is kind of also the question we have to ask. And I guess we'll find out, but Maru is going into that stim where INnoVation does slap down that second factory. This is the map that I've last seen mech on for TVT.
It is a nice setup because all the four bases you can take initially are pretty darn close together. And if you have turrets at your natural kind of thing, Obviously, getting into the main base is pretty hard if you take this kind of triangular setup, which that makes it very nice for mech, given that getting Doom dropped isn't really a kind of losing ability here. But yeah, just looking at the way that both these guys are playing, I love INnoVation's setup so far. He's getting the turrets, he's getting the... Can't get into the natural, you can't attack the third, and having these Ravens stay alive as well with so much energy, just trying to bust through this is going to be ridiculously difficult.
Yeah, I mean, Maru just going to take the high ground here. Continuing producing barracks, not particularly fast. Fourth CC just wants to keep the pressure on INnoVation so he also doesn't feel comfortable. But Cyclones are now out trying to grab any of the air that he can. Looks like he might grab that Banshee. Now it's going to barely get out. Oh, that was very, very close. But the rest of the air army from INnoVation, his actual air army, Vikings and Ravens, is quite intimidating. That's actually 3 full energy Ravens in just a couple seconds here.
This is when it gets very scary for a bio player. Like,
right?
Now I'm looking at this, thinking, I've been in this situation before and it didn't end too well for me when I was in this kind of shape. So I'm curious as to what Maru's going to do exactly. He's putting out Marines, Marauders, Vikings, double starport.
Yeah.
There we go. You can't just let the mech Terran build up because he's going to have a better ground army than you. So seeing this kind of transition, I'm curious as to whether he's just going to say, okay, I'm going to get so many Vikings out, or whether he's going to go for an early fusion core as well.
Ooh, wow. Imagine that game, man. Imagine that game where it's battlecruiser versus battlecruiser. 40 minutes. We could definitely use one of those games because some of these other series have been kind of fast.
Liberators are also super good, actually, for those fights. Like, I know the anti-air damage isn't that great against like a cluster of Vikings and such.
Yeah.
That's a nice scan, by the way. Like, INnoVation's been really on point with his scan, so now he knows, like, oh, I'm against a guy that's transitioning to triple starport, am I? By the way, how often do you get a mech player that's not only like ahead in CCs of his opponent, but also ahead in upgrades?
Right, yeah. The mid game is so important for the bio player, like the early to mid game, to try and get those leads. You're supposed to have more expansions. You're supposed to have better upgrades. You're supposed to have, at some point, a bigger army that you're trying to pull and push the mech player around. But this is actually kind of been a passive game. Maru has seen no openings from INnoVation, and INnoVation is getting to the better army and is accommodating correctly for whatever tech swap Maru might be throwing out here, which it is, those starports have been used to produce just Vikings. He wants to get that edge, but then if he's going to do that, then I do think you also need to get the fusion core for those Liberators that you should also be getting, as that was moved off a tech lab. You can now do 6 times air units if you want.
INnoVation Hellbat drops. Is this like 2015 again when he was doing this with like the 4 Hellbats? But in 2 bases, this is very gnarly because as a bio player, you don't want to really be affording any economic loss. And oh no, the SCVs in the main base aren't reacting at all, and that SCV kill number is growing rapidly.
Yeah. Oh man, that was not that great for Maru, who already guys, like, and I'm gonna let my bias actually leak through here as well, but like the situation of the bio player, it just feels like you're just already so far behind and then you lose 19 more SCVs. Like, your plan of surprise is no longer going to be a surprise, and you got to figure INnoVation knows exactly what to do against this. And it might be like, well, the good news is Thors aren't actually that great if he goes back on a bio, right? Thors really are not that bad, especially because they're going to be so well upgraded, as Maru's upgrades were, I mean, they're kind of late and they're also a bit mistimed.
I'm very impressed by INnoVation's defense and the fact that he has stayed ahead so hard in terms of like not taking damage and whatever. And this Air Force is very, very strong. Such patient play. And once he hit like the 150, 160 supply mark, he was like, okay, now it's Thors and only Thors, even going up to 8 factories at this point and still getting little bits of damage done against Maru with the Hellions like this. You can't allow this to happen. He even sees the orbital command here as well, by the way, so he knows that later on he can continue to send Hellions over here.
Yeah, exactly. Very bold move. Probably a move that Maru had to take, but moving 16 more SCVs puts him down by 13. He might get a bigger army, but he is replacing them. He has gotten into Liberator production. He has a fusion core for the Lib range as well, but it does get tricky against those Thors, you know? Like, and just, oh my gosh, the air army of INnoVation started rather big, and it's still pretty big. Geez, 20 Vikings to 18, but then the 3 Ravens, untouched throughout this entire game.
6 Thors. I mean, do you want them in anti-air mode? In fact, when you have that many, you can like absolutely mix them up to the big shot or the splash damage, just making the life of Maru even harder. But Maru's economy has definitely been, well, it's not where he wants it at all. At this point, as a bio play, you want to have a little bit of map control, and you want to be throwing down way more CCs just to get that little bit of an edge there. And we can't forget, given that Maru, or rather INnoVation, is playing mech here, those upgrades for his air units are also going to be significantly better than his opponent. This is a rough spot to be in.
Yeah, ideally, Maru's at a really great economy to actually get double upgrades himself, but not going to happen. Interference Matrix taking out some of Maru's tanks, and anti-air missile just blanketing the Vikings of Maru, but those Thors, I believe they're in single target mode right now, are crushing through the air, crushing through the ground, and Maru has dipped significantly in supply.
Wow, INnoVation cut through that army very, very easily there. He's still very close to maxed out. He's got 4 bases. In fact, is that a 5th base on the right side as well? No, just a barracks floating around. But now he's like throwing down way more units. That's 3 tanks, 2 Thors, 2 Vikings, 2 Hellions at a time, and 3-3 is getting close. Maru has to slow this down somehow. But how do you slow it down? Maru runs in with a large concave. He's actually taken out quite a few of the Thors in the front line. But those tanks at the back are dealing so much damage, and INnoVation.
Really none, but he did make sure to send an SCV out in a common proxy racks location, because even though he's going for a factory expand, it still makes you even more safe, more mentally prepared. And this time, guess what it finds? 2 racks. Can't really stop it, it looks like. Well, it can stall it out, that's for sure. And another SCV's on the way, so maybe he can stop it. Put this down to a 1 racks. That would not be very good for Maru. The micro battle is real, trying to get the nice little Sim City to work out for the SCV, trying to repair it. No, it's not going to work. INnoVation has stalled this out considerably while getting his factory, getting his own Reapers, and Maru's got to go to plan B.
Yeah, and I mean, when you get that scouted so darn early, it is not a good feeling. Maru back at home is getting his 2nd gas. He's now producing 2 Reapers at a time, but he knows his opponent knows exactly what he's doing. His first Reaper will pop a little bit earlier than his opponent, but this is just a numbers game at this point. Like, he can't really win this fight, can he? And no, he cannot. He goes home with his tail behind his legs.
I mean, we know that Maru is very capable of just kind of making something come back. You know, his control of the game, his micro, his decision making. He can try and make this work, but this is a bad start. I do like the idea a lot because this is what favored him.
Because they are getting quite a bit of damage done here, and the Reaper's almost like, well, they're just darting around. They made the turret quite a bit harder to plant as well, and that's a nice cleanup by INnoVation, but that's definitely something that can get Maru back into the game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's certainly something, and the Reapers aren't going to do anything else. It's not going to really help on a main engagement. So bringing the SCV is a bit closer, but still a 6-worker difference. INnoVation's 3rd CC is already done. In fact, already an orbital being floated over. He is once again going to mech, and Maru's not going to have a very strong, I don't know what we want to call this, early mid-game. It's not very strong right now.
This is super dangerous, by the way. Cyclones deal so much damage to CCs, and you're seeing that right here, especially with the Magfield lock-on. Oh, he lost vision. He sent the Raven to the main base. I mean, it was kind of... Oh, he's going to go for the tank.
He's going to get it.
Tank. That's a counter turret to counter these turrets?
Do they prioritize each other? I'm actually not sure how that works. I guess not, because they killed the SCVs. Anyways.
Oh, I think he was actually just like focus firing.
That's very true. That's probably what he did. Auto turrets have one of the highest priorities, guys. It's one of the weird factors about them.
And the madness of all of this game, Zombie Grub, is that Maru's actually super evened up the work.
Right?
He's now got his 3rd CC out as well. So despite a sickeningly good early game from INnoVation, he's turned everything around here, which is insane.
No, it's absolutely, you're right. Like that delay in the 3rd CC, getting the tank, getting the SCVs, like he really has brought it back to a little more even. But I'm just like, I can't believe this is happening because it's a bit of a throwback. We had Cyclone versus Cyclone earlier, like last year, 2 years ago. We might have it again. Actually, interference switch on the tank. Maru's going to go for the kill on that.
Oh no, is Maru actually making magic happen here? The 4 Cyclones, they run in, they try and take out the tank here. The lock-ons do happen. There's nothing that INnoVation has that can shoot back. This is monumental play by Maru in this TVT. The Raven even falls. There's nothing that INnoVation can do. He's just chasing with SCVs, but these Cyclones, they're microed by Maru. 2 Hellions show up, but what are they going to do? He keeps the low health Cyclone at the back here, and INnoVation, I don't know how this has happened.
How does Maru do this? The lock-ons go, and it's a little bit of a wonky fight right there. The Ravens are kind of out of the equation as they are low energy, so INnoVation knew he was eventually going to be able to push this back, but Maru went from being down in SCVs, later 3rd CC. His army also, I didn't think was that different, so just utilizing it so well. INnoVation unable to actually keep that tank alive, but now I think one thing he still has is his faster production, and he finally has the upgrade to match Maru's upgrade, so he's going to try and take this fight. Auto turret's available, however, and that is going to send INnoVation back home. But wow, Maru now up a couple SCVs, just a couple, but considering where he was, this is amazing.
We're not out of the woods yet. Like, this is still really close between both of them. Maru's landed his third, but so is INnoVation. And their work account, despite all this chaos that's gone down, they're pretty darn close. 100 supply against 101. And Zombie Grub, they're both going mech in this game, which is super insane to see.
Yeah, it's really a throwback. Like, there used to be a Cyclone period, and it was absurd, you guys. But we're kind of stuck. Like, eventually they might go into tanks, and whoever does successfully is probably going to be better off. But when it's come to Cyclones, I mean, imagine what just happened with Maru and on top of his tank, but on a grander scale, that can still happen. So Maru, as he starts tanks here, could be taking a bit of a risk. Could be, if INnoVation finds the right time. But INnoVation, perhaps a more passive player. Well, nope, not here. That's actually, is this the time? Is this the time? 3 less Cyclones for Maru. His Raven's a little low on energy, but SCV pool going to buy just enough workers, army to actually hold on there. But that's a scary thing that can happen. INnoVation's not transferring over into tanks.
Haha, damage being done on the other side of the map here. So Maru is trying to stabilize with tanks to get a little bit of a hold defensively, whereas INnoVation, he's just all about that map control. He's getting lots of Cyclones so he can dodge around and maybe take a 4th base a little bit earlier than his opponent.
Happening on the right side, Raven still available for Maru, always going to be able to help, something that INnoVation does not have himself.
That was a lot of turrets. I feel that Maru kind of threw too many down for that fight. Obviously, it's a very scary moment, but 1 or 2 turrets, or even 3, can kind of do the same job as 6. They're going to make your opponent run away.
Odd place to put your armories. They are delayed a little bit. But yeah, finally back onto those tanks. A little more of a typical mech about to happen in about maybe like 90 seconds here. 1 tank can also really help anchor these fights defensively for Maru. He's even got a little bit of a wall trying to help out. A lock-on does go on top of 1 tank, but not the other. INnoVation, I don't think he's going to be able to break Maru's defenses now. Like, there's just, I know it's kind of absurd, but like 1 or 2 tanks not being touched is really key in these types of battles.
I like this too by Maru, just kind of throwing a random depot at the top of his bases just to see where the army is of his opponent. Throws down a scan to see that INnoVation is taking that top 12 o'clock base as his 4th as well, which a little bit unusual, I guess, but kind of makes sense. He wants to have as many bases forward as possible, given that he's the one playing for map control here with this very, very movable style. But back at home, he's kind of switching to this slower mech, and actually, he's just forcing out. Like, he's being so aggressive against Maru.
Yeah, I mean, he did have Cyclones for more consistently, I suppose, and he did take advantage of them, even if the fights didn't go so well. He won the game, so he's had the map control, and now he can even use that to actually, rally tanks forward to try and really stall out the expansion process of our blue Terran. A couple Ravens were locked on. 1 finally does go down, but Maru pushing now aggressively, finding an opportunity here. Did INnoVation spend too long on the map?
I think he has. Maru is hunting him down, and he's getting good lock-ons, but those are a lot of tanks. So INnoVation isn't going to die anytime soon, but now it's Maru with map dominance.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I quickly flipped on him, actually. The 4th CC looks like it's going to be safe for now, but he needs to get more tanks out here. Upgrades, by the way, done for Maru, and still 2 Ravens alive. INnoVation feeling a little bit scared at this point. His upgrades would also be under fire if he lost control of the 3rd.
You know, these armories, they kind of block INnoVation from actually getting next to his mineral line and going around the top here of the orbital. Oh no, the orbital.
Oh,
is it going to fall? What? He doesn't have vision, he doesn't have vision.
Okay.
Okay, there it goes. That last hit there, and INnoVation loses his 12 o'clock base to a little Cyclone hit squad as well. And look at the face of INnoVation. His, like, static face just went to a little, oh dear, what's happening to me?
Yeah, I just blew, like, his, like, cheek out a little. Okay. That did happen in quite a flash, and he had an extra couple seconds to lift that CC too. Very unfortunate. He tries a desperate lock on his opponent's 3rd command center, but that does not work out. INnoVation, wow, that went from, like, 10, 15 supply difference to very quickly upwards to 50. Upgrades might not matter here. He's got to have the best tank positioning and turtle, really, but he's going to try and at least catch Maru in the middle before he's really sieged up. At least keep his 3rd location alive, even though it's no longer his 3rd CC.
Oh, this is really bad for Inno at this point. Like, he's outnumbered, he's outgunned. Maru has a better army and more of it, and Maru, like, look at this, he's getting into a great position here. He's kind of locked outside his base. Those 3 siege tanks take such a good position. And INnoVation, what can he do against the might of Maru here? Maru taking a fight on the right side as well. He is just dominating INnoVation from left, right, and center, but that is a lot of Hellions dealing a lot of counter damage. chaos everywhere. INnoVation is fighting
Whoa.
back with everything that he has. But Maru, is there just too much of him at this point?
This is so weird. Actually,
Oh,
INnoVation
no.
really trying to bring this back. He's going to mass repair that command center, but the tanks have got get a little farther north. It looks like he's cleaned up the attack on the left side as well. Somehow, I guess Maru is dipping a little too close, flying too close to the sun. Suddenly has lost that supreme lead of supply. He still has more SCVs, but the army has evened up.
These armories, again, the tanks can't fit through there. They can't get into a nice position to defend the orbital entirely. I think that's quite a mistake by INnoVation because it's made quite a few of these holds way more difficult for him. That being said, he's very far behind in SCVs now, and Maru is still on 4 bases mining with, I believe, 4's orbital commands very soon against just the 2 of INnoVation.
I mean, 4 tanks is very scary. Maru is going for, I mean, he basically turned back into battle mech to try and rally forward and really get the kill. But the tanks can take effective trades against this if they are sieged. And that's something that's very difficult for INnoVation. He doesn't have many units protecting those 4 tanks. He just doesn't have enough units, so even though the counter seems like it could work, the army looked maybe a bit better, Maru has quickly used that economy that was still in his favor to just get too many units. And now he's going to take out another command center.
And this goes from bad to worse for INnoVation. He's down to just 1 orbital at this point. And Maru, with this kind of guerrilla warfare style, just kind of fighting here, there, and everywhere, does get quite a flank here on these Cyclones, so they won't live to see another day, but INnoVation, he's in such a rough spot here.
And 4 tanks, I mean, if Maru just, I guess, runs up a ramp and a choke, like, I guess they can do well, but they should just get surrounded. They should get concaved on. INnoVation desperately trying to use 3 Cyclones against the 6 or 7 of Maru. Now, inferior upgrades too.
How did this random tank hit squad get over here? But Maru is quick to the lift, and they don't seem to be getting much damage done. I think this is near the end of INnoVation in this series. Maru just too strong, too powerful. NGG. Maru takes a 2-1 victory over Inno.
I mean, this all started from a pretty much, I mean, is it called a failed 2-act is always questionable when you have Maru in the equation, but INnoVation, he had learned from his mistakes in the first game, played a perfect mech game in the second game, and the third, I mean, thought he had a good edge in the beginning. Turns out that's not the case. Maru just so, I mean, aggressive and just so good at determining when he has leads, where he can find them. This has been an amazing TVT, guys, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more in a little bit. But first, a break. Thank you so much for watching IEM.